Hello and welcome to Own the Road with AutoTrader, where we make car stuff simple for Canadians.
Sorry, it took me so long. I could not hold my laugh in.
I'm sorry, guys.
We just decided to switch it up a little bit.
Just wanted to, see if you guys were paying attention,
Yeah, thank you, Dan, for that amazing impersonation.
You're welcome.
This is episode 32 of Own the Road with AutoTrader, where we make car stuff simple for Canadians. My name is Jodi, and I'm the editor-in-chief of AutoTrader.
And my name is Dan Alika, and I am AutoTrader's road test editor. And before we get started, I do want to tell you guys kind of a funny little story. Last week, I was heading to Utah for the 2024 Jeep Wrangler drive program. Now, I haven't even told Jodi this story, and for those of you who fall into our age range, you'll probably kind of get a kick out of this. So it was a Sunday morning. My flight was at 20 to 9, pretty quiet. I was sitting in the lounge, just kind of minding my own business, listening to music, getting ready for the flight to leave. And I got up to grab a coffee, and I looked over, and there was this guy, and he had his head down, and he was watching wrestling on his phone with no headphones plugged in, so I could hear it. And he was commenting to someone he traveled with, and I was like, man, that voice is so familiar, but his head was down, and I was like, I'm pretty sure I know who that is, but I wasn't 100% sure. So I grabbed my coffee, and then I turned around and walked back, and he just so happened to be looking up, and it was Fat Joe.
No way!
Yeah.
Lean back?
Yeah.
Oh my God!
So I just walked over and I said hi to him, and he was such a pleasant dude. He was first of all, at that time in the morning, I'm, especially before a flight, I'm just surviving, right?
Yeah.
This guy was thriving, full Louis Vuitton, everything.
Oh my God.
He looked everything he was wearing was freshly pressed. He was
wow.
Yeah.
What an icon.
Yeah. And so I just said to him, he's had a hell of a career, longevity.
And
that's
he's
hard to do.
still going.
Exactly.
We listened to Fat Joe when I was a teenager, and
Yeah.
he's still producing fire music.
Yeah, so I didn't I'm not one of those oh, let's get a photo together. I just wanted to give him a little love. And then so I went back to my seat, and then when I was walking by, he just so happened to glance up, and he was oh, fly safe, man. And I was what a pleasant dude.
Wow.
What a nice, and it's, airports are usually pretty chaotic. You got families hurting their children, and, just nobody wants to be there. So when you have those pleasant moments, it kind of makes the
so
the experience
nice.
a little easier. Yeah.
When you meet a celebrity and they're just a darling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how I felt when I met
And
you for the first time.
Stop. I'm usually not that friendly in the morning in an airport, like you said.
Well, it was just such a great. So anyways, I just wanted to share with you guys that kind of fun experience.
Very cool. I got to get myself a full Louis Vuitton freshly pressed suit.
It was he had the Louis Vuitton roller bag, the Louis Vuitton duffel bag,
Sick.
Louis Vuitton crossbody bag, the freshest Nikes. This guy it looked like he was ready for a night on the town, not a flight to wherever he was going in the U.S.
And I didn't know he was a wrestling fan.
Yeah, it was funny. It was just that he was listening to this thing, watching this video. It was a cool moment.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. What a fun story.
Every time you do that, I'm it's very teacher-esque.
What?
Wow, Dan,
Thanks for sharing.
Thanks.
You get a gold star. So today we're going to be talking about the future of performance cars,
right.
As something, we talk about this a lot, as car enthusiasts, as a collective, this is a topic of conversation that comes up so much. Because it's changing so much, with electrification becoming more normal, and with, internal combustion gas cars being basically phased out.
Yeah.
This is a major shift in what we hold near and dear to our hearts, which is performance cars.
Yeah, and I think, I said it, we have, I don't know if that video will be live when this episode airs, or if it'll be, but around the same time. Let's say we just recently did a comparison that wasn't an actual cross-shop comparison, but between the Kia EV6 GT, so the performance version of Kia's newest electric vehicle, and the Toyota Supra with the manual transmission. And the reason we did it was, the pricing is similar, and it's kind of two sides of the same coin, right? Performance for that mid $70,000 price point. You can get this all electric, kind of flashy, like in vogue approach to performance, or you can get this kind of old school version, even though it's like a thoroughly modern car. Everything about it is like new. And it was interesting to do that comparison just to kind of put it into focus, even for us.
Yeah, it was really eye-opening for us because like we obviously really love electric cars, but we know they're not for everybody. And one case where we especially think they're not for everybody is if you're like a driving enthusiast. And so I started thinking about this a lot because recently every single sports car I've driven this year, my story has been like, oh, this is the final internal combustion version of the sports car we're going to be seeing. The next one that comes out, it will probably be like a plug-in hybrid or even a full electric. And so I've just been thinking about this a lot and like what it means for performance and like how we experience, the joy of driving, right? I drove, the Audi R8 GT earlier this summer, which was like just so sick. Like I loved this car so much. But it was the final one it was the final one with a naturally aspirated V10 engine.
Yeah.
And the Audi R8 was just such an iconic vehicle, and it had so much staying power. And, the next one they come out with will probably be a plug-in hybrid or full electric, right?
Yeah.
And part of the reason why I enjoyed that R8 so much is because of all of the visceral sensations, like listening to that V10 fire up behind your head, like just, pinning the throttle and hearing all of that come to life. It was just such a sensory experience. And, I've driven electric performance cars before, like the Porsche Taycan, for example, and they're close, but it's still not everything that I enjoy about a sports car is there.
Yeah, because it's that holistic experience, right? In that comparison, I described it as like going to watch a movie in a 4DX theater. It's got the moving seats and all that stuff, and it's really cool, and it sets the tone, right? You're watching this action movie, but then imagine, the audio was out of sync. There was like, you'd see an explosion, but you wouldn't hear it.
Yeah.
Or you'd see an explosion and a different noise would happen. That's what is going on with EVs because there's no mechanical noises. And that ties everything in, right? It's what everybody, talks about on let's say a racetrack, right? What you're doing, or motorcyclists are great people to talk to about this, right? Is that what they're doing when they're riding is obviously like watching what's going on, feeling it, but also listening. And when you hear, and it's like in a car, if you're on the track and you're driving manual, you're not looking down at the tachometer. You're shifting based on the sound.
Yep.
When the car is getting close to red line, you're going to upshift. That's the kind of stuff that makes the performance driving experience what it is and what it's been for the last, 100 years.
It engages you a lot more. And even talking about like upshifting, the manual transmission is also one of those things that is like basically dead. There's so few vehicles you can buy today with a manual transmission. And that's fine, it's not for everyone, but from a performance standpoint, it's just so much more enjoyable, like when you nail that perfect shift, you feel like such a hero. And it's just another level of engagement that you don't get with an electric vehicle.
And Toyota has like patented this manual transmission for EVs, but to your point, there are so few on sale, manual vehicles on sale today. More are going away every single year. Like I'm pretty sure. So the Toyota Corolla, you used to be able to get manual, including the hatchback. Now the only one that you can get manual is the GR Corolla, which is great, but it's it's a hyper niche vehicle. There's probably only a couple hundred coming to Canada this year. Even like Subaru, now the only manual vehicle that you can get. There's two. There's the BRZ and the WRX. Like these are going away, and Subaru was like one of the kind of longest to hold on. The Impreza you could still get up until Crosstrek up until this year. The Outback you could get until 2018. So I mean, that to me shows you that it's just like there's no appetite. These brands would sell the cars if they could. So I look at the same thing. Okay, it's great that Toyota has patented. Now let's also keep in mind, like that it's fake. It's just like a CVT having
What's the point of that, though?
to try to give you that engagement, But my thing is, if people aren't buying them with gas engines, why are they suddenly going to buy them? And the only people, once again, the same people who are like, oh, the thing I hate about EVs is that they aren't manual. And then Toyota builds or is saying, oh, we've got this patent to build a manual. And then those same people who are like, blasting EVs for not being offered with manual aren't going to buy a manual EV anyways.
No, I just don't see how that would be enjoyable to me because it's only a part of the experience.
Yeah.
Like, what about the noise? What about what if you mess up? Like, if you don't get the shift right, the computer will just fix it for you.
Yeah.
Like, there's just something missing there.
That's so like Audi. I can't remember the guy's name, but Audi worked with this like sound engineer guy to produce the EV noise that you can turn on or off in the RS e-tron GT, and it's kind of a mix of those like futuristic spaceship noises with some like gas engine noises, like some revving and stuff. So
that's
it's
weird to me.
It's better than just the
silence,
spaceship or remember in the EV6 GT, I said to you, I was like, what do you prefer? And we put on the spaceship sounds and then we turned it off, and you're like, both of them kind of suck. Like,
kind of, yeah, because it gets old after a while, The first time I was in the Porsche Taycan and you just floor it, it makes this crazy like, ooh, and like the faster you go, kind of the louder the sound gets, and it really does sound cool.
But then it drones on the highway.
It drones on the highway, and after a while, it kind of loses its novelty. Yeah. So it's there's still something missing, but. Besides electrification, sports cars have been being discontinued for a while now. As soon as everyone kind of shifted their preferences to crossovers, a lot of iconic sports cars have been discontinued, like the Audi TT.
Well, you can still. That's going away after this year.
After this year, but even like one. I don't know.
Hey, I just want to make sure if people are like, "Oh man, I gotta get out and get one."
You gotta go get one now. But even like the Mercedes SLK, you can't get that anymore.
Who cares?
I know, and these are such niche cars to begin with that like I don't really think people are gonna miss them that much. But my point is that a lot of sports cars have been disappearing.
Yeah, but I mean, then you look at Toyota brought the Supra back, the Nissan Zed's still
which
here.
I'm so
you
happy
can still
about.
buy Camaros and Mustangs and the BRZ and the GR86, the GR Corolla. Like, I'm not one of those, the sky is falling. I think it's just changing. And if you look at like muscle cars too, back in the 60s and 70s, it's just like we're in a bit of like a figure it out stage.
Yeah.
And people are buying SUVs. So then we have performance SUVs and like
and
the Jeep
cool
Grand
too.
Cherokee Trackhawk is super cool. You like that Porsche Cayenne GT Turbo, whatever it was called that you drove. It's not the same, but it's something.
It is something too, and I totally get why preferences have shifted because a lot of us only have one car garage, so we need something that can do it all: practical, fast, stylish, and a lot of the times a sports car isn't going to do that for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But, even like the Dodge Challenger, this is the last time you're going to be able to get it with internal combustion engine. The next time it comes out, it's going to be fully electric, which is cool. Like, and the concept looks cool.
It's about time. I don't know, guys. We've talked about this before. I know this isn't like a strictly, EV episode. I know it's such a hot button issue. Every time we post EV stuff, Facebook and YouTube just like explodes with these comments from people saying, like, you'll never get my gas powered vehicle, out of my driveway. And the thing that we always remind you guys is like, the government is not going to come around and round up all of the gas burning cars. Like, the target is 2035 new vehicle sales will be fully zero emissions. So that doesn't mean that they're going to come knock on your door and be like, give me the keys to that.
No,
you can still be able to drive it and buy used and all that. But it's like, the reality is, this is something that has to happen.
Yeah.
Climate change is real. I'm not saying that, like consumers should, or like the general public should bear, the burden. It's like you get into everything with plastic bag bans, but it's like we got to do something.
Yeah.
And if this is the something that has to be done, like the reality is the auto industry is one of the biggest contributors to greenhouse gas
Absolutely.
emissions and climate change.
And it has to change. And so
Yeah.
we're on board with it.
Yeah.
We totally are. But in this aspect, we're a little bit skeptical of what's to come.
Yeah, and
we'll accept it regardless.
yeah, like I'm definitely intrigued by, the next gen of the Porsche 718 series.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's the Boxster and the Cayenne or Cayman, and so the next gen that's coming like as early as next year is going to be fully electric.
Yeah, and I feel like if anyone can make a sports car that is fully electric really, really hit hard, it's Porsche.
Yeah, I guess the hard part for me, the thing I'm still skeptical about, and we saw it in the EV6 GT and Toyota Supra. Yes, they're very different vehicles, but the EV6 outweighed the Supra by something like 1,600 pounds. It was some
was wild.
astonishing number.
Yeah.
Because, batteries are heavy.
And weight is the enemy of performance.
Yeah. So it's definitely like one of those things that you can't ignore. And the same goes with four-wheeling. When I did the Jeep Wrangler Rubicon 4xe, like the plug-in hybrid version, and I went out with the Central Ontario Off-Road Jeep Club guys, the capability was unquestioned. And same with this 2024. Jeep put on a great media drive program down in Utah. We did some like gnarly four-wheeling. But still, you could feel the weight. Now, the same thing goes. They had the Wrangler Rubicon 392, so the V8 powered one. The same thing applies.
Also very heavy.
It's just a big, heavy engine up front over the front axle. When you go to drop off a ledge, as soon as you reach that kind of tipping point where gravity takes over, you can't stop it from dropping off that ledge.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how hard you're stepping on the brake pedal. You just can't change that. Electrification is the same way.
Yeah, and we get a lot of comments about so we did a story about a couple electric cars that are fun to drive, right? And someone pointed out oh, how come there's no Teslas on this list? Which always happens,
Guys,
but here's the point, there's so much more to that makes a good performance car than just straight line speed.
They're not designed as sure, okay, the Roadster, the original, and this make-believe one that's supposedly coming and people put like $2 million deposits down on. Sure, those are purpose-built performance vehicles. A Tesla Model S, a Model X, a Model 3, I don't care which one you're talking about. These are not performance vehicles. It's the same thing with saying look at the, performance of like a BMW 3 Series. No, but if you're talking about the M3, sure. But there's so much that's gone into that. It's not just a bigger engine, right? There's the suspension has been completely overhauled. There's more chassis bracing. The brakes are bigger. There's so much that goes into it. You can't just go, well, this one's got 1,000 horsepower, so it's fun to drive. It's like, drive it on the track. Look at what happened when Tesla did that. Remember the Model S that Tesla brought to the Nürburgring?
Oh, yeah.
And was like, oh, this, and Elon Musk was like, oh, this thing, we took it right off the factory floor and we brought it out there. And then spy photographers, I guess he didn't, think about the fact that they're there all the time. They took all these photos with their, telephoto lenses, and it's like there was chassis bracing, there was stuff removed, the tires, the brakes. It was not a factory spec vehicle. Whereas when you take a look at something like, I remember when I did the Audi RS Q8, and the factory driver who set the Nürburgring, I don't know what's the record holder now, but at the time it was the performance SUV record holder. And he said, yeah, it was factory spec, and Audi was very forthright about
Absolutely.
What was the same about it. It wasn't just like, oh yeah, no, trust us, it is. And with Tesla, it's just proof that these aren't out of the box performance vehicles.
Yeah, you have to make some modifications, right?
Because the trim is called performance, it's the same thing with, calling it full self-driving, and we all know that's a lie too.
Yeah.
So don't just take it at face value.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to our Supra versus EV6, the EV6 GT when it came out accelerates literally faster than a Lamborghini. But that does not mean it's a great performance car.
Yeah, and also that idea to me is, you got to think, right? So when I wrote the review and when I wrote that comparison, not once did I mention this claim about it being, as fast, as quick, or quicker than a Lamborghini, because by the same measure, right? You could say, I don't know, that take a look at the Dodge Challenger
Demon.
Yeah, SRT Demon that we did last year. That thing's quicker than a Lamborghini,
but pretty much only in a straight line.
Exactly,
you throw that thing through a corner and you're gonna
so it's like, I don't know. I mean, good for Kia, I guess, but at the same
it's a cool
time,
claim for sure. But like, again, there's more to performance than straight line speed.
And that thing was a little bit better. It had like adaptive dampers, but then on the flip side, and we didn't get into it in the comparison, but we can get into it here, is like the Genesis GV 60,
the little SUV?
Yeah, the electric one.
Yeah.
Right? That is the same architecture,
Yeah.
and it also has adaptive dampers.
And a boost.
And it's got like this boost. I guess that's the difference, right? Is that the EV6, the GT mode, is just like you access all of that output all the time when it's engaged. Whereas in the GV60, when you hit that, you get that maximum performance for like 10 seconds at a time. But still, like the adaptive dampers, for example, yes, the engineers at Kia are going to tweak the damping and make sure that it's, kind of set up for that vehicle. But like the GV60 also is available with that same adaptive damper system, and that's billed as a luxury vehicle. So once again, it just goes to show you that calling it performance doesn't necessarily mean it's performance.
It's just marketing.
Whereas you take a look at the Toyota Supra, that is a sports car, in concept and in execution.
Absolutely.
And even the 4-cylinder version is still going to be fun to drive, and it's going to have those performance parameters that somebody looking for a sports car is going to find. It's not based on a mainstream or just a regular version of a car.
No, it was purpose-built.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when we don't have those right now. With EVs.
With EVs, that's true. And that's why I'm really excited for when that actually becomes a reality. So I just wanted to take a couple minutes to go over a couple electrified performance cars that recently came out. Some of them are real, some of them are concepts. But it kind of provides a glimpse into like what we can expect from electrified performance. So the first one is Lamborghini, which came out with its first plug-in hybrid ever. It's called the Revuelto. So it's a plug-in hybrid, but electrification has almost nothing to do with this. Sorry, let me say that again. It has almost nothing to do with being efficient.
Yeah.
The electrification is only there to augment performance.
Well,
and just
hold on. Augment performance as well as lower the fleet emissions average.
Yeah, but like look at the specs on this, okay? It has only 10 kilometers of EV range, which is nothing, okay? It costs about $700,000. It has a V12 and 2 electric motors. And so the guy from Lamborghini was basically like, yeah, it's for fuel efficiency, but, if you want to roll out of your driveway without waking up your neighbors, now it's possible. But first of all, like, okay, who buys a Lamborghini and doesn't want to just like blast up and down the road full power all times, right?
Yeah, the whole thing is bizarre.
It's kind of bizarre, but
don't forget about the remember when Porsche had the 918 Spider, and then Ferrari had a
what was it called? The LaFerrari, and then also the McLaren P1. They were all electrified.
They were all like plug-in hybrids or whatever. And so it's like, this isn't the first time we've seen this, and we've also seen the same thing. It's like, those brands aren't serious about electrification.
No.
Like, that, to me, it's just, like, people that give them so much credit of like, look, they're fine. It's like, they're not doing it because of environmental concerns. They're doing it because it lowers the fleet emissions average, and just like in F1, there's a performance boost that comes with adding a little bit of electrification.
Exactly, but they're going to have to make that change because eventually every car they sell is going to be electric. So Lamborghini, by the end of this decade, will have its first full electric vehicle.
But again, right, that's super cool.
It is so cool. I can't wait to see what it's like.
Let's also keep in mind, right? Again, if Volvo does the same thing, right? Volvo's like, oh, look, we're going to be fully electric by 2035. And it's like, that's because you have to.
Yeah, I know. It's not
Right?
because
Like,
you're some like
gov-
altruistic
yeah,
company.
government's everywhere. So it's the same thing with this idea of like Ferrari and Lamborghini saying, "Oh, by the end of the decade," it's like, yeah, man, that's future proofing your business.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, I'm surprised it's taking this long, and it just proves that the auto industry, just like any other business, when it comes to change like this, and when it comes to corporate social responsibility, sometimes you got to drag them kicking and screaming. I think the now under Stellantis, but the FCA brands, Dodge, Jeep, Chrysler, all of those guys, Ram, they're still building 700 plus horsepower vehicles, and there's still no like all electric. Sure, there's an electric Ram that's coming. The next Challenger is going to be electric. You can buy a plug-in hybrid version of the Wrangler and of the Grand Cherokee. You can buy a plug-in hybrid version of the Dodge Hornet and the whatever the
Tonale?
yeah, the toenail, the Alfa
The
Romeo.
Alfa Romeo.
But like that is a company that I think went meh.
Yeah, it's because clearly that's not what their customers want.
But and I also think like government regulation, right?
Oh, they have to do it. Yeah.
In Europe, there's such a push because the EU holds these brands and these companies to account and says like, no, you have to do it. Here's your target, and if you miss it, there are big consequences. In North America, it's just not the same, right?
Yeah.
There's not been like any kind of, even like a slap on the wrist. Like, sure, Quebec has zero emission mandates for automakers. So you need to sell a certain number of zero emission vehicles in Quebec. Otherwise, there are financial penalties involved. So, that was a bit of a wake up call for brands that were still kind of late to the game, like Subaru and Mazda. But like for these other guys, they're making so much money. Look at the Challenger is a great example, right? That thing has existed since, I don't know, 2007 or
With
something crazy.
minimal updates.
So it's like now it's just printing money.
Yeah.
So even if there are big financial penalties, think about the money that Stellantis is making off of those sales. Sales are increased for that thing. It outsold the Mustang last year.
Wow, really?
Like, so, there's no, like, what's the penalty? It's the same thing with, like, distracted driving. When I lived in Alberta, right? All these rich guys in their trucks still were talking on their phones because they're like, what's a $400 fine to me?
It's pennies to them.
And it's the same thing with these companies. They're like, we can keep selling these vehicles. Like, if change is going to happen, it needs to be, kind of forced.
Yeah, for sure. And so there's one more concept car that I wanted to talk about. It's the Porsche Mission X concept. So it's a Le Mans inspired fully electric race car. And this one stood out to me because they have a very good track record of actually building their concepts, or like a version of their concepts, right? And so they haven't promised anything. They haven't said we're going to make this, but they're already saying that we want it to be the fastest road legal vehicle around the Nürburgring. And knowing Porsche, they're 100% capable of making that happen because they've done it many times in the past.
But then maybe this is, a topic for another episode. It's like already, cars have gotten too powerful, too quick. It's the same thing. Like Becky's mom sent me this link that the FAA in the US approved testing of the first flying car. And it doesn't mean that you can go buy one today. It just means the company has been approved, has regulatory approval to start testing this vehicle. But it's like, I kept thinking about it. Like, look, man, we all see traffic every day. People are idiots, and they can't drive when there are posted speed limits and lane markings and all of that stuff. People are crashing into each other all the time. What's going to happen when you're in the air?
I would not trust that for a second.
So now the same thing applies with this. You're putting, and these Teslas are a great example. I'm not trying to pick on Tesla owners, but putting somebody with no experience
and
driving something and being like, here's 1,000 horsepower, go have fun. It'll do 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 2.5 seconds. That is a recipe for disaster and for destruction. And I think as we push into this, it's going to be the fastest around the Nürburgring. Like, why? We don't
I
need
know.
that. We don't need that.
And
That's
so-
not what's sexy anyway.
Yeah, but it made me start to think about like, okay, all of these like crazy advancements are coming from luxury brands, but like, what about mainstream performance cars? Like, what is the Miata or BRZ gonna look like in 5-10 years? You know, that to me was like, oh, I have no idea what that's gonna look like.
I don't know. Maybe it's not going to exist because
Maybe.
battery packs are so big and heavy
Yeah.
that's also why I'm like with this whole, Porsche 718 series, like that's such a small car. Where's the battery going to go that's going to give you that balance of like range and performance? The Miata is the same way. I, am a Miata lover, a former owner, not sure how that's going to happen.
Like, how will they translate that experience? I don't know.
I don't think you can.
Anyway, if any of you had questions about what we think about the future of performance cars and electrification, you can email us at expert@trader.ca. But before our Ask an Expert segment, here's a message from our overlords. Save time and money by using AutoTrader, Canada's most trusted place to buy and sell new and used cars. AutoTrader has the most cars, and one of the best features is price badging, so you can feel more confident that you're getting a good deal. So this Ask an Expert comes from David from BC.
Hello, David.
He asks, what's the correct way to signal, enter, and exit a traffic circle, both single and double lanes? Great question, because we are seeing a lot more traffic circles on our roadways nowadays.
Yeah, it seems, like that idea of, like a cat in a litter box, like when the kitten's born and the mom just like drops the cat in the litter box and then the cat just goes, well, I guess this is where I do my business. And they just figure it out, right? I wish humans were like that, because to me, traffic circles make so much sense, roundabouts, whatever you want to call them. And if you go to, Europe and the UK, they're everywhere, and people generally just seem to know how to use them. And here, I remember like in Kitchener, when they started rolling them out in Kitchener, it was just a mess.
Yeah, and the rules are different depending on where you are. But from my experience, first of all, no, for some reason in Canada, nobody signals when they're leaving a traffic circle.
And entering as well. So here, to answer David's question in a roundabout way, get it?
I see what you did there.
When you enter the traffic circle, let's say it's a full kind of four exit circle. So you're entering kind of at the south point and you want to go to the immediate east point. You're automatically going to enter the circle, obviously giving right away, assuming there's no other vehicles in the traffic circle. You are immediately going to activate your right turn signal to let other road users know you are taking that immediate exit. If you are taking the north or the west exit, what you are going to do is activate your left signal so that people know you're entering and continuing around the circle. And then as you approach the exit that you want to take, you activate the right signal to let people know that's your plan. Because let's say that you're going from that south and you're taking the north. There's somebody waiting from that east road and they don't see a left signal. What are they supposed to do? If you're getting off at that east, you should have your right signal on so they know, oh, I can now enter. Think about it just at a normal intersection. Or when you're pulling out of a parking lot and you have those courteous people that as they approach, they signal. You're waiting to turn left or right out of a parking lot entrance and somebody's approaching and they activate their signal to let you know, hey, I'm turning in here. So now's your chance to turn out. The same thing applies to roundabouts.
We all got to work together on this, right? And the other thing I see a lot when I go through traffic circles is that people stop. Like they treat it like a stop sign, which is like not the right thing to do because the whole point of a traffic circle is to keep the flow moving.
It replaces stop signs and traffic lights. So use them correctly. Yes, there are yield signs. Just like on a street, slow down, approach with caution. But the idea, if you're looking and there's no traffic, but there's a car behind you, a full stop is going to cause problems. That person might run into you. Like, that's just the reality of it.
Yeah.
David, that's a great question. And, I'm glad you asked. And I think more people do need to be aware of how to approach these.
Absolutely. And the next question comes from Gord, who is also from BC.
What's up, Gord?
This must have had to do with our road rage episode or our Forgotten Rules of the Road episode. So this one was long, so it's a bit condensed. Perhaps it's just a regional variation, but in British Columbia, nobody has the right of way, ever. If you read the Motor Vehicle Act, you'll find that many clauses that read that drivers must yield the right of way. Even emergency services never have, quote, right of way. Rather, all drivers must yield the right of way to emergency service vehicles with flashing lights on. It's a small distinction, but legally it is huge. You will do more to reduce conflict, reduce collisions, reduce injuries, and reduce fatalities by promoting the concept of yield.
Yeah, of course. But I think people are misinterpreting what yield means. For at some point, who's going to be the one to make the move? Right? That's why it's like if you approach, what's the rule of the road? If you approach, an all-way stop and at the same time as another vehicle, you yield to the vehicle on your right. Well, on the off chance that 4 vehicles pull up to an all-way stop at the same time, everyone's to each other's right. So what, we're just going to sit there in like this, proverbial like showdown of politeness? Like, no, you go. No,
Yeah.
you go. It's like somebody has to make the move. Yes, yield, but that's also self-preservation, man. Like,
Yeah, and
yield
common
so that you
sense.
don't get, run down by a oncoming vehicle. But yeah, emergency vehicles, they have to yield, I guess. They approach they can't just blast through intersections. Yes, they have to slow down but they have to slow down regardless, even if it's a green light and their
Yep.
lights and sirens are going, they still slow down to make sure that nobody's coming across that intersection, because they're doing that. Again, it's self-preservation and preservation of the job at hand. They're trying to get to the scene of an emergency. If they get into a wreck, they're not going to make it there.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Gord goes on to say that it's his personal pet peeve when people don't signal, or when people signal and proceed to change lanes when it's not safe to do so.
Oh,
I
man.
agree, Gord.
Gord, I'll tell you, I told Jodi, I may have told this on another episode, I don't remember, but I was on this road. This guy was he was ahead of me. There was no dedicated left turn lane. He had his left signal on and then turned right, like right in front of me, because he decided to go the other way. And it's just like people are, it's really annoying. I'm not a mind reader.
It's also dangerous.
Neither are you, Gord.
Yeah.
And so we need people to use their signals.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Thank you, Gord and David, for your questions. If any of you have questions or comments, you can email us at expert@trader.ca. And that wraps up this episode. Thank you so much for joining us, and drive safe, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Bye, guys.